Good evening and welcome to our Facebook Live this evening. My name's Jenny McCormack and I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator, and I'm based in the market town of Brackley, which is in Northamptonshire in the UK. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Let's move those out of the light. I don't like it when it reflects and you can't see anything. So thank you for joining us. It is Tuesday the 5th of July already. I'm not going to say it, but it is Tuesday the 5th of July, and we're using this week a stamp set called True Beauty, which I've just buried somewhere on my desk. How can I do that? There we go. I put something on top of it. It's always the way. So we're utilising this stamp set this week. This is my stamp set of the week, and all that means is that I feature lots of different ideas with this stamp set during the week. So during the week you'll get lots of different ideas, different colour combinations, different projects, whether they're cards or bags, anything like that. And this is the stamp set we're featuring this week, which is also one of the stamp sets I used at our weekend Let's Get Creative event that I ran last weekend with team members Tara and Lynn. These were the cards that we made yesterday morning during our live. So we have this one here. This used Flirty Flamingo for the main roses and Granny Apple Green for the leaves. Hopefully you can see that okay. And then the other one I did was Coastal Cabana and Bermuda Bay for the sentiment. Obviously stamped the envelope to go with it. And these are on note card sized cards, 3.5 inches by 5. These are handmade from a sheet of A4, and that's because I had a lot of envelopes left over. So I just cut some coloured card to coordinate with that. So before we get started, let's just make sure that we are indeed live and where we say we are. Oh, it looks like it. Just mute everything, so I don't really want any interruptions unless it's an emergency. Okay. Just minimize those. Okay, so this stamp set can be found in the main annual catalogue, and I need to look it up. I thought it was page 60, but it obviously isn't. There is an index in the back of the catalogue, so if you know the stamp set, page 67. I was only 7 pages out. So it's from this suite called A Wash in Beauty, which has these lovely papers which I'll be using later in the week, and it has some lovely dies and a huge lattice die that fits perfectly on a card. But this is the stamp set on its own. It's £23, and I'm going to do a variation really of what we did at the weekend. So at the weekend, which I showed you yesterday, the projects, we stamped an A4 sheet and then we cut it into different components to make a complete gift set, which was a card, a little gift box that we stamped and decorated, 3 mini cards, and then a wrap for a bottle and also a little tag. So we're doing a variation on that, but a simple variation, so that we're going to stamp on a piece of A5 card, and we're going to create a panel for a birthday card or a thank you card, and then the other half of it is going to be turned into a bookmark. So there's various ways that you can stamp this to get the effect. I'm actually going to stamp down the center here so that I've got a card on one side, and then this panel is going to be turned into the bookmark. So I'm going to be using these two 3 images, the main flower images and the leaves, and I might also bring in some items from the framed occasions. Now this was the stamp set that everybody got as part of their goodie bag at the weekend, so there's a stamp set always included, and it's got this really lovely flower here, but lots of tiny little pieces, which is really good for one sheet wonder or just background designs. So I'm going to start with this and then move on to that if I need to. And what I wanted to get out was the rose, because we used the other one as well yesterday, and then this small flower. And then if you were watching yesterday, you will have seen that I talked about cutting this leaf into 2 so that I have more flexibility with 2 leaves than I do with 1, but also leaving them so you can actually put them back together again, and so they will, when they're stamped, they'll fit the dies. It does seem really dark in here. It must be, I don't know whether it's me or whether it's the setting on my computer. So we have those 2 there, so I'm just going to use just one of those, and then we'll add a sentiment later on both the card and possibly the bookmark. It just depends on how the pattern works. So I'm just going to, in my mind, have an imaginary line that goes down. Obviously, if you've got grid paper or a piece of vellum, you could draw a line down. Because I'm doing a simple stamped effect, hi Tracy, hi Jeanette, then I'm not doing any measuring. I can work out, you know, I can see by eye roughly where that line needs to go, but you could measure it with a T-square and do a faint pencil line if you wanted to. I'm not too worried about that at all. So let's grab, I'm going to use these 2. I'm just going to switch it on to a proper Stampin' Up block. These ones come from our kits, which are great for the kits because they're lighter weight, but I find them slightly more difficult to hold. These have got really nice grooves in them. So I'm going to start, I think, with a little bit of this rose, and I'm going to use Balmy Blue. So I'm changing the colours up today. I've got Balmy Blue, Starry Sky, one of our new in colours, and Granny Apple Green. They're going to be my main colourways. So I hope everybody is well, and I hope everybody has had a good day. Let me just find my way back. There we go. Hi Nikki and Claire, I believe you've joined as well, whether you're still there I'm not sure. So I've got that lovely rose, and I'm inking up Balmy Blue ink here on the left hand side. I'm just going to move this over so I can stamp on the right. Now this is just some old cartridge paper, so I know it's not going to give me the full effect. Cassie, can't you find a space to sit down? There's loads of space. Is there a piece of paper in your way? Sorry everybody. Try that. Okay, so I'm just going to start by stamping off at the top, and then I'm turning this round like so, and then round again like that, and then I'm going to come over this way a little bit, and bear in mind this is going to be cut up, so you don't have to worry at this point really what it looks like. I think I'm going to do that in 3 as well, and then maybe add one on here, because what I want is something on either side of my imaginary line. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is add this little flower here, and then I'm going to add the leaves. And I found the best way to do a one sheet wonder, especially if you're doing florals, but if you were doing You could do this with any stamp set. Even if you had images of, I don't know, tools or something like that for a man's card. I always recommend start with the largest image and then work smaller and smaller and smaller, because then you can fill in the gaps. What you don't want to do is do too many little ones and then you've not got enough gaps for maybe your central images. So this is Starry Sky, as you can see. Good, I'm glad Jeanette as well. And let's have a look and see how this stamps. Okay, so it's a little bit light, but I think I'll be okay. I'll stamp one up here first. Oh, that's fine. I'm happy with that. Now, I love this watercolour effect of these stamps. And it is watercolour month. So I'm rotating the stamp as I go round, or you could rotate the paper, whichever you prefer, like so. And you can see the difference between this image and this one on the paper. I'll just bring this up. And this is often a problem when people first start stamping, is not stamping onto the right paper. So this is the same image, and you can see how this one is broken up and then this one is more solid. And that's because I'm using like a cartridge paper, which is very fibrous and doesn't have a smooth coating. And yet our basic white card, especially the standard or the thin, I tend to call it, has a smooth coating. It's well pressed, and therefore it really takes the ink. And the other thing is that dries nice and quickly. So if you're having any issues as a beginner with your stamping, there's two things you can check to start with. One is the ink itself, and the other is the surface on which you're stamping, and obviously to an extent the stamps themselves. So here is my line here, roughly. I could use my block here to give me a feel for how that's looking. And then this is going to be my bookmark, or I could reverse those round, it really doesn't matter. So I'm now going to add leaves before I fill in too many spaces. And as I said before, I've cut this stamp in half so that I've got 2 leaves, and it makes it much easier to add those leaves in, because you can cross them over. You've got almost like a point that you can use to fill in, like so. Make sure I'm turning this round, and you can stamp and stamp again. It's called second generation stamping, to get a lighter leaf. You can see that one there on the left hand side here. Hi Brenda. You get a lighter effect. And so let's just add this in, like so. And the nice thing about One Sheet Wonder is sometimes it doesn't look particularly good when you start. Hi Carol. But because you're going to chop it up, it makes it look completely different, which you will have seen if you saw our examples yesterday, or if you're at Let's Get Creative, where I did lots of different combinations and just literally chopped them up. So I've got obviously got a bit of a gap here. Okay, so this is going to be my card, if you like. So it could be that I stamp a sentiment in there, but I think what I'm going to do is actually fill that in with one of those, that sort of this floral image here. Let's put that out of the way. Just going to turn it so it sort of fits in there nicely, like so. And now I can go smaller and just use this to fill anything else in. So I think what I might do is use my Balmy books. I'm going to keep this fairly blue and green. I could introduce another blue, but what I'm going to do is ink up this stamp and stamp it off first and then add it, so I've got a slightly different tone. So let's put that in there. And there. So this is quite a solid area. Normally mine isn't quite as solid as that, but it will do the job. And then finally I'm going to add, I think, from this framed occasions, I'm going to use this circle. Now this looks like these two and these two are one stamp, but they're not. So this is a really useful set that's got little bits of leaves, it's got dots, but it's got these two really lovely shapes, and these also mimic the dies that come with them, because you get some circle dies and square dies and hexagonal dies. Okay, so I'm just going to use, I think, the green just stamped off, and you're going to barely see it, I'm afraid, from here, but it's almost like a little boat postmark, is the best way I could describe it, from a postage stamp, you know. Oh, I can't think of the word. There we go. So there's my main design like that. I could add in a little bit more detail here and here and here, just to fill that in, which I think I might do with my Starry Sky ink. Thing is, not, you don't want to overdo it, that is the thing. So I think what I'm going to do is just add a few dots. I'm actually using the ones from Forever Fern because they're some of my favourite dots, but I could use the dots from that same set. Okay, so I'm just going to use those in some of those little gaps. If you can hear my cat calling. There we go. So that just breaks up that design a little bit. Okay, so there's our stamped part one sheet wonder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this down and create a card base. Now if you don't have any vellum or anything, you can just use a piece of paper and work out roughly how that's going to look. So if I had a glaring gap here, for example, I've got this here, and if I didn't like that, I could go back in now and just fill that in. Okay, so that's one side, or I might look at that one and think, actually, I prefer that for my card base. Now I appreciate you can't see that, you can't see the detail in those panels, but what I'd be looking at is, could I get a nice sentiment in there, or would I be better using that right hand side, for example, as my bookmark, like that, and then this portion being my card. Now it could be that I actually might get two bookmarks out of this. If I cut this panel here for my card, I could get a solid piece and an edge piece. So I might just do that. Okay, let's grab the trimmer and cut it to size. So it's all about just playing with the stamps that you have, playing with colour combinations. And I just wanted to do something slightly different. And the thing is, you can add to this. Once you've done the stamping and cut it up, if there was a glaring gap, for example here, and I wanted a long sentiment, I can just fill in. So it's best to have it, underdone rather than overdone. So what I'm going to do is use this to work out which is going to be my card, and my card base would be 9.5 centimeters here. So that would work quite nicely. Or I could make this my card base. I could trim off any excess, for example, and make that my base. And I can't actually decide. So I'm going to go with what I started with, which was this one here. So I'm going to cut that at, let's have a look, at 9.5. Yeah. So that's going to be my card base here, 9.5, and then I need to trim this to 13.85. So I'm actually taking a centimetre off, and I can decide which side I want that. I think I'm going to take this edge off. And so if you're not very good at measuring, I know I want it a centimetre difference, I can just use the centimetre ruler on the right if I want to. Okay, so that's going to be my card base, and I'm going to add a sentiment on there. And then this is going to be my bookmark. Now I want my bookmark to be 5 centimeters deep. So what I'm going to do is cut this. Actually, I could have it just completely solid if I wanted to. Or am I going to put a little space in here? Well, I think I'm going to go solid. That wasn't my original plan, but there you go. So that's going to become my little bookmark. Okay, so what I want to do is layer these up, and actually I'm going to trim this a little bit more because I want to put this on an Orchid Oasis piece, Starry Sky piece. So I'm actually going to trim that to 4.5 centimeters. And I could at this point think, actually I just want to fill these little gaps in. I mean, I do quite like some white space, but I'm just going to fill these in because they're a little bit uneven, so I can just top up any gaps that I've got. So I'm going to pop that one in there, and oh, drop my ink block, stamp block. Just going to put a little bit of blue in there and then some dots in the middle. So just going to put that in there, and actually this would put perfectly in there. Okay, just going to add some dots in just there. So you can add to it, you can leave it exactly as it is, but I'm just adding to that to sort of finish that off, and I'm going to pop that onto a Starry Sky piece of card. And then for this one, I'm going to add a sentiment across the top. Let me see, I want one really that is fairly long and thin. I could do wishing you the happiest of birthdays. This one here would work quite nicely in there. Also the go-to greetings would look really lovely. That was very popular at the weekend, the one with all the different styles. top of it. So what I could do is stamp that in there, and if I wanted to add some detail here, or I could bring it over here and add a bit of detail in there, or just leave it as it is. Let's stamp that. And I like to, once I've got my base colours down, I like not to introduce any extra colours. So for the sentiment, I always pick out a colour that is on our card. Oh, hi Louise, hi Scylla. Thank you for joining us this evening. And this is actually the set and the design that we're going to use at Coffee and Card this week. So we're going to make a bookmark and a card. Got a little bit carried away with the ink there. Okay, I'm actually going to take this piece off because I can't see where the edge of my card is. And perhaps I should have put a Stampin' Map underneath just to give it a little bit extra support, but there we go. So wishing you the happiest birthdays. Hope you can see that okay. Like that. Okay, so let us layer these up. So we're going to use a piece of Starry Sky. So I'm going to make this as one layer onto white. You could do easily 2 layers if you wanted to. And then that's also going to be, I'll get another piece, my layer for my bookmark. So let me check these measurements. So this should be 13.85. So this is going to be 10 centimetres. It's already cut short, that's why I was slightly confused. Okay, so that's 10 centimetres by 14.35. So that's going to be that layer, and I'm going to pop this onto a white card. Make sure I don't get it covered in ink before I do anything else. So this is our thick basic white card, makes perfect card bases, as does any of our coloured card as well. Okay, so that's going to be my layers for my card, like that. And then this is going to require another piece of card. Let's see how big that one is. It's better. Okay, so I'm going to cut this at 5 centimetres, and then I'm going to use one of our tag topper punches to punch the top out so I can thread some ribbon through and convert that into a bookmark when I've got it straight. So I'm going to do that first. Hi Wendy. Nice to have you watching us today. I hope you're keeping well. So we've just got a simple, small One Sheet Wonder to make a bookmark and a card. So I'm going to cut this first. And so this is 5 centimeters, just under 2 inches, and you want to make sure it's right to the top of your punch. Hopefully you can see that. If I just move that away, just buff it up the end. Now sadly, this tag topper punch is retired. There are lots of other ways you can do it. If you've got any of our other tag punches, you can pop it in, but make sure you don't chop the bottom off. Or if you've got a die, you can just die cut the top and leave the rest of it open so it doesn't cut it down. No worries, Jeanette. Thank you so much. Thanks for stopping by. Okay, so what I like to do is just pop that on there. I'm going to trim this excess off so I've got the same amount right the way round. And something on that doesn't look straight. Let me have a look. I don't know whether it's that piece or my bookmark piece. I'll take my glasses off. It's my bookmark piece. It's not quite straight, so but I think I'll get away with it. So I'm just going to turn this over and just mark where I want to cut that. I could measure it, but I'm just going to mark that like so. And then just cut that excess off, and that can go onto there. And I've just done it so that I've got the same amount roughly all the way around. Okay, so let's pop these together. Let's just move that out of the way. So I have some glue. I tend to keep bookmarks flat so they don't mark the book in any way. So I don't really want to add pearls or gems or anything to this. I can add them to the card, but I don't really want to add them to the bookmarks. I don't want to have indents in the books. So there's that there. And then these layers are going together, and then I can stamp on the inside of the card, and I can also stamp the envelope and add some bling or anything else, some ribbon if it required it. I don't think it does. I like this blue-green colourway. You know me, I tend to do a lot of pink, but blues and greens, nature's colours in blue sky, less blue flowers. I mean, there are quite a lot of blue flowers around, but yeah, blue for the sky, green for the grass. That will do. So I'm going to pop that on there. This is my layer. Turn it over and press it down, as long as I've got a clean table. And then just pressing it on the back just in case my hands have got ink on. There we go. So there's our card, and that together with the bookmark will fit in an envelope. So I'm just going to stamp on the inside. So I just bring back my piece here, and I'm just going to do it in this corner. So just an excerpt, if you like. So just pop this one here. And then one like that, tiny bit there, and then adding our granny apple green leaf. So it makes a really nice little set, little gift set for someone. Doesn't have to be birthday, it could be any time of year, but I think bookmarks are always well received. Let's just put another one in there. Okay, so I will do the envelope the same. I'm going to add some dots. Like so, and we're done. You don't need to see me do the envelope, I can do that straight after. So let's move this out of the way. Crunch. Okay, so there's our card design, hopefully you can see that all right, and here's our bookmark. And all I need to do now is go and find some ribbon to thread through there to finish that off. And I do like to thread it through and just tie it with baker's twine to keep it flat, so that it will go in the envelope nice and flat. And you could stamp on the back. You could use, so I've got this off cut left, so I could pop that on there with a sentiment. I could put the same thing on there, or to from, whatever you wanted to do. So there we go. So I hope you enjoyed that. So that is a stamped half sheet wonder because it comes from an A5 piece of card to make a bookmark and a matching card, and that's what we'll be doing at Coffee and Cards this Friday and next Monday. So I hope you're able to join us for one of those, and I will be back tomorrow. Hi Katie. So tomorrow, Wednesday, I'll be back here at 10 AM and I'll be doing something different. So I'll be introducing the papers and also introducing the dies that match this True Beauty stamp set. I'm going to find the case for you, which is this one here. So all I've done this far yesterday and today is just use the stamps, and they're really easy to use because they have this, they're distinctive and they do all the work for you. So I hope you like those. I'll add some ribbon and finish those off, and I'll post a photograph of that later, and you'll be able to watch obviously the video of this on YouTube shortly. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a great morning, afternoon, evening, depending on when you're watching. Thank you so much, Brenda, Jeanette, Wendy, Katie, Scylla, Carol, Nikki, Claire, and Jeanette, anybody else who's still watching, and obviously anybody who's watching after the event. Please do pop hashtag replay if you're watching it later, whether that's on Facebook or on my YouTube channel. So thank you, have a great evening. I'm off to do a bit of tidying up, and I look forward to crafting with you again soon. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye for now.